Hi, this is Wilfredo Hernandez, Arts and Culture Group Leader at Brooklyn Community Pride Center.
Jackie Yodoshkin with Immigration Equality.
And we're here today conducting our third interview for the LGBTQ New Americans Oral History Project.
Yes. And with us today we have...
My name is Se Young Pyo.
And can you tell us where you are, Se?
Sure, I'm at the Brooklyn Community Pride Center in Brooklyn, New York.
And it is May 22nd.
2016. And maybe we'll get started with, Se, can you tell us a little bit about where you grew up?
Sure. I am a South Korean citizen, but I grew up in Manila, Philippines, and that's where I lived until I was 18 years old.
And what happened when you were 18?
I moved to the United States to go to college here.
And how was that?
It was great. I went to Yale University for college, and it was a pretty incredible 4 years of my life.
And what did you study while you were at Yale?
I studied political science, but really I just studied whatever it is I wanted to study. I took a lot of bioethics classes, queer studies classes, that sort of thing.
Cool. And what happened after college?
I did move away for a year, but I came back to the U.S. To go to law school here, and that was 4 years ago. So I completed law school, and this is now my 8th year of living in the United States.
What are the biggest differences between Manila and here?
Oh, wow. Where do I start? Actually, New York City is pretty similar to Manila. It's equally noisy. There's too many cars, too many people. But it's definitely different being a minority in the United States, whereas I definitely grew up as majority Asian in Asia. But I think the food is a little bit better in the Philippines, although you can definitely get some really good Asian food in New York.
Yeah, and do you sort of keep that food culture alive in your home life, or do you seek out other aspects of your culture here?
In a lot of ways, I've gotten really used to living in the U.S., but I do miss just sort of home habits. I miss eating Korean food every meal in my family house. I do cook mainly Asian food. That's the only thing I think I know how to make without a recipe. So I definitely keep a lot of my cultural identity with me as I live in the U.S.
Can you tell us what you do for a living now?
Sure. So since completing law school, I am now an attorney, which is very exciting. I've only been doing work with the LGBTQ community and really hope to continue to be able to do that. So I am actually currently a fellow at Immigration Equality, so it's really exciting to be able to participate in this project that Immigration Equality is co-sponsoring.
And what is it like working with people from the LGBTQ immigrant community every day?
It's incredible working with LGBTQ immigrants. So part of the reason I sought out working with the LGBTQ community is because I find it impossible to separate the personal from the professional, and I thought I would be the best lawyer I could be if I was working with people that I felt a part of as a community. I think I'm really honored to be able to share with some of my clients and say, I know I can't understand everything you've been through, but I too identify as a queer immigrant, and so some of the stories about feeling alienated in the United States, or missing things about your country, even though you face so much persecution or challenge in your home country. I feel like it's a privilege to be able to say I can understand at least a small fraction of that experience.
And what do you personally miss the most?
I think I don't know if I can answer what it is I miss the most, but I think I feel I feel like I'm caught somewhere in the middle, living in the United States, where I definitely don't belong in either the Philippines or South Korea anymore. My life is here, and the family I choose to call my family, my friends are all here. But I don't quite fit in the US either. I think there's so many things when people say, people use the pronoun we, or they say, Americans are, this and that, and I don't feel like I fit in that sentence. So yeah, I don't know what it is I miss, but I think having some conflicted sense of who I am and where I belong. I guess I kind of am sad that I'll never have a more straightforward sense of who I am and where I'm supposed to be.
You mentioned that you can identify with some of the persecution that your clients face. Can you talk a little bit about how LGBTQ folks are treated in the Philippines or in South Korea, or?
So growing up in the Philippines, there's a subgroup of people who identify somewhere on the spectrum of gay men and trans women, and they're in my childhood they were pejoratively labeled as baklas, and they occupy a bit of a strange space of acceptance and rejection kind of at the same time. It was always really difficult. I have a family that has a more conservative attitude towards the LGBTQ community, and the kinds of things that my own parents would say when it is they saw a very effeminate or femininely dressed man, or someone who I don't think they would themselves identify as transgender, but definitely presenting in a way that was more feminine. So I grew up with some of that, some of those kinds of really negative and homophobic comments just tossed around me. And that was 10 plus years ago. Today, I have friends who live in Manila who are openly lesbian and gay, but again have a pretty complicated relationship about being open about that with their religious families. Dating is very difficult in the Philippines when you are LGBTQ, And this is all in the capital city, which is much more liberal than the rest of the country. So today, it continues to be complicated and difficult being openly LGBTQ in the Philippines. On one hand, things are getting much better, but on the other hand, my friends who are openly lesbian and gay have a little bit of a complex relationship with their families about their identities, and it is very difficult to date when you're LGBTQ. In so many ways, identifying as queer, that's only really possible for me living in the United States. That word only makes sense to me and to the people around me who love me in the United States. And it's just not really an identity that would be possible or make any sense if I were still in the Philippines. I think being LGBTQ is probably even harder in South Korea. South Korea is a kind of place where people will fly from Seoul to places like Tokyo, places like Bangkok, to go to a gay bar, and it just doesn't. There's no space to be LGBTQ in South Korean culture, and I think a lot in my own life, even in the United States, about what it means to be what I call and what lots of people call a Gaysian, just because there's so much overlay with identifying as queer and having quite a lot of cultural baggage, trying to sort of reconcile that with your Asian identity.
Yeah. What was it like to come to the U.S. after being in a place where you really couldn't be an openly queer person?
I didn't actually understand my own sexual orientation until I moved to the United States, and I don't think that's uncommon. I was also relatively young when I came to the U.S., but I think there came a point in my life in the last 4 years when I think I kind of understood for the first time that that I couldn't ever go back to living in Asia and be my full self. Again, that was just not going to be possible because there wasn't any space in either the Philippines or South Korea for me to be openly and proudly LGBTQ. There was a point at which I wondered, I'm really interested in working with LGBTQ populations, and wouldn't it be great if I could do that work in a place like Korea or the Philippines? And it was heartbreaking to think that I wouldn't be able to do it and feel right about myself. Just the conversation in the places that I come from, they're not ready to talk about what it means to be queer, to be somewhere on the spectrum, to be fluid, and yeah. So when I kind of had to accept that that an integral part of who I really am, my sexual identity, that wasn't something that could ever really be explored in a country like the Philippines or South Korea. Yeah. It's really sad. Because on the flip side, I feel like there are so many ways in which I can't fully be someone who is from the Philippines or South Korea when I live here. So in kind of a deep way, I guess I feel like I'm not really fully me no matter where I am.
You mentioned during your undergraduate studies at Yale that you'd taken some queer studies classes, I believe, at some point. And what was it like making that leap to, an academic environment with the freedom to explore issues and subjects that you couldn't broach before?
So I think I would 100% credit my experience at Yale for helping me realize my own sexuality, and also being a space where I could understand being so not straight and not lesbian. I guess pansexual is the word that is most descriptively correct. But I didn't openly identify as queer in college either, but I remember taking a class with a lesbian-identified Asian American professor, and it was a small seminar, and we were talking about queer identities across different cultures, and at some point I spoke up in the seminar and I said, and the room was full of graduate students who were very visibly queer, and I felt really self-conscious being someone that at that time I didn't identify as queer, and I said, well, coming from the perspective of someone who isn't queer, and I wanted to make my comment, and my professor said, you're so fucking queer. and I felt, and I still think about that all the time as one of the first times I felt like, I don't know, part of something bigger that I really identified with. And welcomed, I guess, into a community that my professor belonged to, that many of the other students in that class belonged to. I only myself became comfortable identifying as queer actually 2 years after that event. But that was really the first time. I was 22 years old. It was my senior year. It was really kind of the first time I confronted the fact that that's who I am. That's what I am. Really proud to be able to say that I am.
So the term queer, that you self-identify as queer, what does that term mean to you? Can you define that for us a little bit?
Yeah. So queer is a word that I guess it's tough to define. I like to think that it means that you identify as non-normative in either your sexual orientation or your gender identity, or both. And I like that it's really open-ended, and that it allows for a lot of creativity and sort of self-definition. It's kind of it's sort of inherently, other people can't define it for you. You can only define it for yourself. And so for me, it does capture my sexual orientation, which I sometimes joke I'm attracted to any human being that moves and breathes, or I have the potential to be attracted to any human being. and I also think I like that it really puts me in a community with other friends and other immigrants and clients who identify as something other than lesbian or gay or bisexual or transgender. Yeah, so I guess the definition of queer, pretty open-ended. It does the best job in for me, in defining my pretty all-encompassing sexual preference.
Thank you.
So you talk a lot about being part of a community. One of the communities you're also part of is Brooklyn. What drew you to Brooklyn, and what has that experience been like for you?
Sure. So I'm a very new Brooklyn transplant. I actually moved to New York City, I guess just over a month ago now, in April 2016. So Brooklyn is still new to me, but I was a little worried about moving to New York City. This is where I moved to join my partner. Because I had lived in smaller cities where there was a single LGBTQ community, for instance, and New York City, as people probably know, there's not just one single LGBTQ community. It's kind of this beautiful overlay of lots of different queer communities in Brooklyn, in Queens, in the Bronx. So I was definitely a little nervous about just coming to someplace so big and so busy and so full. But Brooklyn feels comforting to me. There are streets in Brooklyn that actually remind me of other places I've lived, which is nice. Whereas I feel like when I walk around in other parts of New York, there's this sense of, I'm in New York, there's so many skyscrapers, I'm totally gonna get lost in this grid system. But Brooklyn, I kind of like the spiraling streets and the low-rise brownstones. It feels a little manageable, and I like that a lot. I'm definitely looking forward to getting to know the Brooklyn community more and being more part of. I'm feeling more like a resident here as opposed to. I still definitely feel like I'm just visiting, but I would really love to feel more like I am an LGBTQ person that lives in Brooklyn, and I would love to just participate in what I know is this wealth of resources that are available for people like me.
So what do you do for fun?
I usually hang out with my dog. My dog Roa, who I adopted in September of 2015, and she is my best friend. What do I do for fun? I don't know. I have no idea. Ask me a different question. I don't do anything for fun.
Do you have any favorite spots in Brooklyn or in throughout the city that you visit? Or?
So everybody knows this. The food is amazing in New York City. And so in my about month and a half of living in Brooklyn so far, it's been really great to get to just pop into a restaurant and have just like really incredible food from a different country, served by someone who is originally from that country and pay less than $20 for it. It's pretty great. And I really like that Brooklyn feels really walkable. So walking it around with my dog and getting to explore the various dog parks in the area feels it feels good. I'm really warming to feeling like a resident here as opposed to a tourist or a visitor.
So you're going to be adjusting status soon. What does it feel like to know that you can stay here and you can build your life here?
So I married my partner very recently, and we are in the middle of processing my application for permanent residence. It's jarring. I actually had this one day in the flurry of all both of us kind of preparing and being excited, and obviously we had a small wedding, which was really lovely. But I had this one day where I got really sad because I never thought that I was going to stay in the United States. And I was emailing friends who live in the United Kingdom, who used to make fun of me when and they said, "Oh, you're so American," and I would say, "I'm actually not." And I emailed them and I said, "I'm applying to be a permanent resident in the U.S. and I told them I never thought I would do that. But here I am, and yeah, it's really emotional. It's like I said, this is where my life is. This is where I've built my life in the last decade. But I think lots of immigrants feel this way. A lot of the clients I work with feel this way. Even though your life is good here and you don't want to go back, there's just some part of you that never thought you were going to stay here forever, and some part of you that didn't want to stay here forever, but here you are, and here is how your life has ended up, and of course you're happy and grateful and excited and all these wonderful feelings, but there's also just this part of you that thinks, wow, here I am. I never thought that this would be where I would be. So yeah, I have mixed emotions, but it's definitely the primary feeling is I am so lucky to be able to be where I can be who I am. I can be with my family and my friends, and I can do meaningful work and be a lawyer and an advocate for the LGBTQ community. So yeah, it's pretty incredible.
What do you think people should know about LGBTQ immigrants?
I think if I could tell people So being an LGBTQ immigrant, there's so much baggage and there's definitely a story behind the person you see in front of you. And it's definitely true of any immigrant, but I think I feel a special pull towards the LGBTQ immigrant community because of, I think definitely some of that challenge in translating translating who it is you are across cultural and national boundaries. So being unable to explain who it is you are and who it is you love because of where it is you come from, where it is you grew up, and I think that's really hard, and you carry that with you every single day. So I think to the general population who encounters someone who is LGBTQ and is an immigrant, I would say that person is bringing so much to be here in America, and is carrying so much, and I hope that they take the moment to appreciate that and listen to their story.
What do you want people to know about you?
I would like people to know that I am one of many, and that my story is really different from lots of other LGBTQ immigrants, but that I'm also, I guess, part of that sort of hodgepodge of people that find a home in the United States. So I think I don't know. I think there is this sort of template immigrant story where they leave the country, where they no longer choose to live because of economic reasons, because of education, because of persecution, and they come to America and everything is so much better here. And the thing is, that story, in my own experience and in the experiences that I've been privileged to hear about working with LGBTQ immigrants in my work, it's such a flat fairy tale version of the story. And I think being LGBTQ, you feel so lucky and so fortunate to get to live in a country where you can be yourself, but it is also so much of a challenge to live in a place that means you have to build a life and a family from scratch. You need to and yeah, so there's I don't know, I guess I would like people to maybe see how I'm part of all of that. I again present a unique perspective, but I put myself squarely in the middle of other LGBTQ immigrants who have a complicated relationship with this country that they've decided to call their new home.
Is there anything else that you would like to add to this interview?
do you guys want to meet my dog Roa?
Absolutely. Hi, Roa.
Hi, Roa. So this is my dog. She's 11. I actually got her in September, not knowing if I was gonna stay in the United States, and I thought, I'm gonna adopt you anyway, and you are going to be my family member in the United States. That was my exact rationale for getting her. And I thought, you know, if I have to leave the U.S., if my visa runs out, if I need to get a job elsewhere, you're coming with me. But I think when I adopted her, I kind of already subconsciously felt like, I guess I'm probably gonna be in the United States or try to be here for the long haul. And I think not having family in the US has been kind of the hardest thing about being an immigrant, and so yeah, so you are my family member. You are my family member.
How did you find her?
At a shelter in Worcester, Massachusetts. I drove from Boston to meet her and adopted her the very same day. We met and we decided we are meant to be living in the same place and taking care of each other. So,
It's nice to meet you, Roa. Is there anything else you think we should know about you, or anything else you want to tell us?
I don't think so.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Say.
Thank you, guys. From Boston to meet her and adopted her the very same day. We met and we decided we are meant to be living in the same place and taking care of each other.
It's nice to meet you, Roa. Is there anything else you think we should know about you, or anything else you want to tell us?
I don't think so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Say.